Why is it not showing? Oh,
Hey.
hey.
Oh my gosh. I feel like, oh my God, every time we not on here or doing like a feed, it's got to get used to it all over again.
Oh, I know, because I was like, I thought it was kind of frozen on my end because seemed like it was kind of lagging, but I said I guess it's going through.
Oh no, it did. It was so funny. Like you started live and then it was like, hello.
Well,
I got my
hi everyone.
theme.
Oh yes, got us too. Matching, we matching.
We're not gonna try that mug thing again, try to connect it. We don't do that right.
Oh no, it's okay. Well, welcome everyone. Tonight, me and Kira wanted to do our first impressions on the new Netflix series Adolescence. So hopefully we're going to share our thoughts, see what everyone thinks about it. Join us in the chat if you've seen it or give us your thoughts. I wanted to start with a trailer, so we're going to go right into kind of just showing a little trailer of the series.
I haven't done anything. You're a good dad, a great dad.
He hasn't been found guilty, he's been accused. What have you done? It's a call to action by the manosphere. 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. You must trick them because you'll never get them in a normal way. We've done nothing wrong, have we?
Oh my God, love this series.
Oh yeah,
And it was actually a very quick watch, I must say. Like that's one thing I will say in terms of like English series, foreign series, they wrap it up very nicely. 4
Oh yeah,
episodes.
yeah. It was 4 parts. And I binged it. You binged it too?
I didn't actually binge this series. I did watch 2 at once and then watched the last 2 the next day. So nope, I didn't binge it, but usually that is my course of action. You could have actually sat in one sitting and did it, but I said, oh, 2 and 2. Why not?
Yeah, this is one that stays with you. So I probably would suggest maybe sitting with each episode, but I can understand. I get so like ready to just finish it. But yeah, this is one that really does stay with you right after.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And it's rare. Well, maybe not. Well, more so rare nowadays. It's really hard to find a series that, like you just said, stays with you, that lingers. And this one
Mhm.
definitely does. I think people will be talking about it for a long time. And I actually think it would be a good idea to reference it if the goal is to educate and better inform, specifically our young boys, our young men.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I'll start with the synopsis of the show. So, the show is like Kira and I said, is a 4-part miniseries on Netflix. It recently just premiered. I think it premiered last week. So it's been out for at least a week now, and a lot of buzz with this show. So everyone's really talking about it for good reason. But the series follows 13-year-old Jamie Miller, who's arrested for the murder of a female classmate. And
Oh
so the
yeah, and can I
series,
say? Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh no, did I interrupt the synopsis? I
Oh
didn't
no,
even
no,
know if
go.
you jumped the synopsis.
Oh no, go.
Was that it?
Oh no, go, go.
Oh no, my God! No, finish the synopsis. I think I cut
Oh
you
no,
off, girl.
oh no, Kara, go. Say what you
Oh,
said.
I was just gonna say what I love about this series, similar and unique to like The Fall in a bit. Like, you automatically know who's going to be the perpetrator, which is
Mhm.
really good. So you already knew, in terms of the synopsis, the initial premise, what the series was going to be about. So I think that it really focuses more primarily on kind of unearthing and understanding more fully why, if there is a why, he actually did what he did.
Mhm. Yeah, like you said, yeah, the show goes right there. This isn't a really of who's done it. It kind of focuses a little bit more on the why and exploring a little bit more of that. Each episode explores the aftermath of the crime, and I really like how the series kind of focuses on how someone's crime can affect like all those around them, like the family. Really delving into that too, because so much a part of that is how it affects the family.
Oh, the ripple effect. Oh,
Mhm,
100%. I
mhm,
agree.
mhm,
I agree. And I like that each episode, there was a primary focus in terms of the 4 episodes. So the first episode, without jumping too much into the latter ones, we'll discuss them in more detail. Our primary focus is the arrest of Jamie, right? So even the way
mhm,
it starts, I like it, kind of jumps right in. Initially, you see, oh, can I say first, I do like how the series starts with showing like just pictures of our title
mhm,
character as a young boy. And I thought that was
mhm,
actually interesting in the sense of you capture the small child, and you wouldn't think, I'm sure, parents like imagining that this would be what happens in the future in terms of like what your child will do or what your child may potentially become.
mhm.
And then it kind of jumps into we meet our main 2 characters. Well, not the main characters, but the police officers.
Oh yes, yes.
I don't know if we're going to explain who those characters are right off the bat.
Yeah, I wanted to just go back a little bit to kind of what inspired the series from the
Oh,
creator.
sorry,
Yeah,
jumping
so
again.
oh no, that's okay. So the series is it was directed by Philip Barattini. It was co-written by James Thorne and Stephen Graham, who actually plays in the film as Jamie's father. But he said what inspired him to do this series was he was noticing in the UK an increase of stabbings of young boys involving young girls, and he noticed that across the country it was like a significant amount of stabbings, and he wanted to kind of explore kind of what's that about, because he said growing up as a young lad, he never saw that as a huge issue. So he really wanted to make a piece about that and why that could be occurring.
Exploration of the root cause.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Yep.
So, to go to episode 1, like you said, Kira, is we start right off with Jamie, who's been arrested for the crime. As you said, it starts right off with him in the police station, getting right to the root of why he did what he did.
Oh yeah. Well, just to back up a little bit, the series, we introduce the 2 police officers, right, who are throughout the series, and we see them actually entering the home of
Mhm,
Jamie and his parents and his sister. And so right off the bat, that's quite jarring because you have the police enter the home looking for Jamie as the primary suspect. It goes through a series of him being arrested, what that means in terms of like the family, right? You're seeing how they're actually trying to process it. And I think it does a really good job in terms of like capturing from his initial arrest, the car ride, the police station, and then
mhm.
ultimately get into this scene, right? When he's confronted in terms of answering for what he's done.
Oh yeah, and initially that scene took me aback because when you do get introduced to Jamie, he seems very innocent. You're kind of figuring out like, oh my god, why they arrested him? What did this kid do? He doesn't seem like the person who would fit what they're accusing him of.
Oh, well, you know what's so interesting to me? At first I thought like, oh, he was you know what? I thought he was guilty right off the bat, although I shouldn't assume
Wait, you
this
thought he
is.
was guilty?
Oh yeah, like when the initial police into the home, the reason why I thought that was because usually for the most part, and I'm leaning in terms of very loosely, it takes a lot for police to enter a household in that magnitude without like really you would think some real hardcore evidence. Do you know what I
Mhm,
mean? I
mhm.
think if anything, when you saw who the actual perpetrator was in terms of who they were arresting, that was jarring.
Yeah.
Because initially I just said like, oh, okay, yeah, clearly there's something that warrants this level of response.
Mhm,
But I was taken aback because even though you know the synopsis, he just looks so meek, so timid, so tiny.
mhm.
And I'm holding that he is 13, but that was actually jarring if this was the person who truly was guilty of what he ultimately was accused of.
Mm-hmm. And as we said, so when we are in the interrogation room, we have Jamie who's confronted right off the bat with that, there's evidence to say that he committed this crime. And I love, like you said in the initial episode, we right away is not going to be a long drawn out process of whether he did it or whether he didn't do it. He's confronted with video evidence to show that he did commit this crime. What were your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, again, like the first episode was so layered. I think it takes us through so many different scenes that you can spend an endless amount of time, like kind of breaking down and discussing. With this scene specifically, if we're focusing on that scene when he's confronted with the evidence, I was taken aback again a little bit in terms of him initially denying it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I think again in a child's mind, right? If you do something wrong, it's easy to like deny it if you could get away with it because that wasn't as surprising. But ultimately, I don't think he even held the gravity of like being in this room and what it all means.
Right.
And until he was actually confronted, in my opinion, with the video evidence, it was still a piece that was like denying until he had to confront initially that it was him on screen. And I kind of thought maybe it was more or less because his dad was present.
Yeah,
He
that's
didn't
what I was gonna say.
want
Yeah, we see throughout that he has a real fear of disappointing his dad. So I think that did
Mhm.
factor into it a little bit, like not wanting to disappoint his dad.
I agree. I agree.
Mhm, mhm. And I love just to go too on how this series is shot for each episode, which is really cool. Each episode is shot in one continuous shot, which is really, really amazing because it makes you feel like you're really in the scene. And at each episode, especially 3, when we'll talk about it, it reads to me kind of like a stage play. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I can get the sense of that. Like, I definitely would agree that it reads like. Well, I think what's unique is in terms of the play. Usually, it's just maybe a scene and one continuous shot. Like, there's not a lot of different changes in terms of scenery. What I loved about the camera angle here is that it followed every single character. Like, how do I describe it? Like, intent on the movement. So there was
Mhm.
no a cut to scene. There was nothing that shifted. The camera was just drawn on the movements of every actor without any breaks. So I thought that was like pretty cool for sure.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oop, okay. Oh no. So before we go to episode 2, I did want to kind of talk about Owen Cooper, who's the main character.
Oh yeah, I feel like
Uh
you can say so much more stuff about episode 1, of
oh, okay.
course.
What did you want to say anything more about episode 1?
Well, I think that it's a good opportunity to kind of break down all of the characters that we're seeing because we're introduced pretty much to like who's going to continue throughout the episodes, even though each other episode kind of has a different lens in terms of which
Okay.
characters you're following. But we can probably discuss like the police officers, like the two
Oh yeah,
main
we could.
police officers, because we have these
Oh,
parallel stories going in.
okay. Yeah, we could start with let's go through all the characters then. Let's just do that one by one. Okay. So, did you want to go over the officers?
Oh yes, and so I'm quite familiar with Ashley Waters. If people haven't seen Top Boy, it's such an underrated series. You could also view it on Netflix. Very well done. And this, I think, is going to provide him just more shine, if you will, in my opinion, because I still think he's an actor that's very much underrated. So he plays Detective Inspector Luke. I hope I'm saying this right. Bacami. Oh my God, Biscami. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
best. I thought like Bascombi. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Please, I apologize if we brutalize that. But I liked his character. I think he was very, as a detective, sharp. Clearly, someone who is invested in his work as a detective, takes it seriously. Um, I found him even very sensitive with regards to how he interacted with colleagues as well as the ultimate family. Even Jamie's character. I do know that we'll meet him in a different focus lens as a father, right? And we can break that down a little bit more. But in terms of the meeting him as a detective first initially, I did like his character. And then his colleague, what's her name? I just want to make sure I'm not missing that right. Ooh,
I think it was
yes, Michelle
DSI.
Frank, right? Faye Marsa.
Yeah, I think yeah, did we have that right? Yeah,
I,
DSI Misha Frank. Yeah, and that's played by Faye Marseille, I want to say it's her name. Yeah, she's
yep.
from Game of Thrones. Is one of her credits. Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah, I
what
like this character as well. Like again, like they seem to be a really good team. In this scene that you're showing specifically, this was episode 2, so maybe you can pull it back up and to discuss it a little bit more. Then I don't know how much we should go into it now, but again, a really good detective. Both of them are partners, and they actually work in the case together.
yeah, our main character is Owen Cooper plays Jamie Miller. And what was cool about this is his first film credit. So he's an
Oh yeah.
unknown talent. This is his first ever acting credit, and he did a phenomenal job as Jamie Miller. What did you think?
Oh, I agree. And I'm not going to be surprised to see him in many, many more things. Like, definitely a really raw talent. Conveyed the screen, was quite convincing. I think he played the role of Jamie well in the sense of the moments of vulnerability. Your heart broke for him. And then he had moments in which he seemed really dark in terms of
Mhm,
just the way his facial expressions, the language he used. He was very clever, manipulative at times, and then again
mhm,
heartbreaking. So I think he did a really good job of conveying all of those emotions and making you think a little bit in terms of like, oh wow, what's really going on with this kid? Is
mhm,
he the monster that you assume him to be? Is he misguided? Excellent job as Jamie.
mhm. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth because episode 3 to me, which was my favorite episode, was like a masterclass in acting, and he did a phenomenal job. Um, we mentioned Stephen Graham, who is the creator, one of the co-writers of the show and creators. And People might know Stephen Graham from Boiling Point. Boiling Point. He was also in Boardwalk Empire, a great talent. And Again, the series co-creator, and he really, like I said, wanted to make a series to kind of look at, like we said, what is causing young boys to kind of have these violent tendencies, especially to their female counterparts. So he plays Eddie Miller, who's Jamie's dad, and a great performance as well throughout the series. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about with him in terms of how he deals with Jamie's actions, how he processes it, and how it affects the family. Before any thoughts on him, Kira? Before?
Oh no, we'll keep going through the characters because I do agree we can actually break them down more so when we look at each episode.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up Jamie. I'm trying to find a clip with Jamie's mother.
Oh yeah, I loved his
Oh,
mother.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, Manda, Miller. Not really, well, no, I think she does have some big, parts in the series, again, I think she did a phenomenal job from coming from her aspect on how, as a mom, you process how your child can do, like, this heinous act, but also we'll talk a little bit more in depth about them too, specifically episode 4 when they kinda really focus on the family, but
Mhm.
also a great, great, performance from her as well. Okay. All right, so I think we can go right into episode 2.
Oh sure.
Okay, and just break that down because I think that was one episode you were kind of talking about with the the school, and that kind of finds out detectives. So we already know Jamie committed the crime. Like I said, right off the bat, they let that be known. So now the rest of the episodes are kind of figuring out the why and the how. And so the second episode, we have our detectives going to the school to kind of figure out from Jamie's peers, get their thoughts on what happened, why this crime occurred.
Oh
What
yeah, and I like the fact that this episode just primarily focused on the two detectives at the school solely. And so what I want to highlight is it's really cool in the sense that each episode takes a specific different lens. And
Mhm,
so the third episode has a primary focus, and then the fourth episode has a primary focus. This is just the detectives and their interactions in terms of trying to navigate the different students at the school, Brentwood Academy, that Jamie attended. And it was a lot of different things I noticed with regards to them being at the school. First off, I think the first teacher who's actually taking them around the school, Miss Funamore. I hope I'm saying her name right. Oh yes, I thought she was quite lovely. Definitely see that she was bothered by many things in regards to kind of taking them throughout the school. And for the most part, I kind of got the sense that she was managing to the best of her abilities to kind of keep them on task in terms of them being able to speak to who they needed to speak to, get them where they needed to get to, but also everything that was going on around the police with her was just so jarring, in my opinion. Hats off to teachers out there. I could never be a teacher. This emphasized it even more, in my opinion. But it was a lot.
Oh yeah, the school scene was very chaotic, and I think me and you talked about, oh my God, is that how schools are nowadays? And I was reading some comments from teachers who actually viewed the film, and they said that like this is really how they're dealing with kids. Like the kids are kind of all over the place. You know what I mean? We saw that with the kids at the school. Like everyone's on their phone, which is something that is really tackled in the series as well. The kids are kind of checked out. The teachers are kind of overburdened, overwhelmed with trying to manage the chaos of the classroom and the kids who aren't paying attention. So yeah, the whole episode kind of felt chaotic with everything that was going on with the kids, and even trying to get the kids to engage with the detectives. You know, they weren't taking their authority seriously. They weren't respectful at all to the authority. It just was really kind of jarring to kind of see.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't. What wasn't lost on me is we see a lot of the kids, of course, on the phones, and I said, oh my God, like we definitely are living in a time where kids in general are more prone and attached to these devices.
Mm-hmm.
We know social media has expanded, definitely, of course, beyond us as young adults in high school, for sure.
Oh yeah, I couldn't imagine dealing with the social media that kids are dealing with now.
Oh, absolutely not. And so I said, oh my God, one thing that would make this school setting better is if they actually like took people's phones, like at least throughout the day, they didn't have access to it. You definitely saw teachers who, well, I do want to kind of highlight because I think there were different dynamics. I believe his name was Mr. Malik. I won't go into too much detail, but he was clearly a new teacher, trying to find his bearings, and kind of was in and out of the classroom very much. There was one scene where he said, like, oh my God, paraphrasing here, but it's like overwhelming. Like, what are we supposed to do? I mean, in one scene when the police officers were there to speak to the kids, yes, the kids like completely had a lack of respect in terms of authoritarian figures like the police presence. Again, that could be layered. I know sometimes people don't have ideal, but thoughts in terms of how they view the police. Again, it could be layered in terms of just adults in general because they didn't clearly respect some of the teachers either.
Oh yeah.
But I did like there was a teacher, I don't remember her name, that was actually seemed to be caring and seems to be really invested in trying to check in with one student in particular, Jade, who was the best friend of our victim in the series.
Oh yeah, Katie,
yeah. So I do think, and one thing that I want to highlight that was really, I think, poignant in terms of this episode too, is when we see Luke actually in a fatherly role. Like, so he definitely has the detective down packed. It's being a father where he clearly struggles. And, again, when you're seeing him, he's quite muscular and he is an attractive man. His son, Adam, which you meet in the school setting, clearly bullied, clearly introverted, the complete opposite of his father. And then you even see, without giving too much away, how he's trying to navigate his interactions with his dad in this episode and then vice versa.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the main thing that I saw that the detectives did struggle, that they weren't getting the answers that they needed, and kind of trying to wrap their heads around that. Because again, like I said, you have kids who aren't really conforming to what they think they should be or answering their questions, and it saw too that they were kind of out of touch. You see the different generations, like from the adults to the kids, and kind of trying to tap into why they aren't being receptive or giving them the information that they need. I found that interesting. And when you talked about Adam, like his son who goes, Luke's son who attends the school, he kind of helped his dad out because he saw his dad was struggling to connect, with the the students in the school. And I thought that was pretty interesting because we have the crime with Jamie, and we also have a Luke who's really bothered by that as well, and trying to figure out why that occurred, and really looking at his relationship with his own son to kind of explore that a little bit.
Oh yeah, a very layered episode because again, like I was questioning throughout, like, oh my God, like why the kids like this? And again, you can make so many different assumptions. I think when we think about influences like peer to peer, there's influences there that clearly maybe explain some of these behavior patterns. Access to social media, so the kids clearly on their phones all day. What are they consuming? Where they're getting their influence from? I went kind of deeper too in terms of like parental influences, right? Or lack thereof, or what that looks like in terms of overall upbringing, perhaps, and like how kids like form how they communicate, or like how they learn respectability, all of those things. So I just feel like it was an episode that made you really think in terms of all these layered things that are clearly happening that directly impact how these kids respond and react to what's going on around them, especially losing a classmate, right? Sometimes I think I said to you too, like, oh wow, people not taking this as seriously outside of her friends, clearly.
Yeah.
As seriously as they should. And I shouldn't say the faculty, primarily some of the kids. It was how the camera was panning, some of the kids just kind of going about the day, other kids almost like in a joking manner about it. And I'm talking about, oh, so Jamie did it. Like it was just not giving the weight that I needed it to. But again, I'm reminded impressionable, immature, a lot of things in terms of the kids.
And you mentioned the scene with Luke and Adam. I really love this scene because again, I loved how Adam kind of explained to his dad, because we see he was struggling getting information from the students as to why you're struggling, Dad, because again, is a difference in generation. Like what you're looking at, you don't know the emojis that kids are using, you don't know the context of what these text messages mean. And him really breaking it down for his dad to kind of understand, like, this is bullying right here. You know what I mean? I really did like how they kind of broke that down.
Oh yeah. I also like from this scene is you clearly understood that these were two individuals who don't have a strong foundation, like they don't have a strong connection as father and son. And even when Luke, prior to coming to the school, kind of left Adam a message to say, you know, he'll be at his school today. He'll try not to almost like embarrass him or make him almost like a center of attention. And so I was kind of holding like, again, we're assuming a lot in this series because we don't always have the background by any means. But having a conversation with his son maybe beforehand about, did he speak to him about the incident? How did he feel? Did he talk to his son about the loss? Like, did he have this heartfelt conversation with him? Who knows? This seemed like the first time they came together to have some type of discussion. And it was more or less his son asking to speak to him, which was a little unsettling to him. And at first, he's taken aback because he don't necessarily understand what his son is saying. I think there was one piece where he said, I don't understand what you're saying, making it almost simpler for him. And as he was listening, he was able to understand that his son was giving him useful information, and was more receptive to the kids clearly than his own dad was. I think he said, you were embarrassing yourself. You were almost like a blundering mess up there just asking these questions. When here it is,
they don't know what to ask.
Which is completely understandable. But I think so it's not lost on me. We have younger siblings. I interact with young adults in my work. It's almost like, how do we communicate with people who are speaking differently, talking differently, like they have different contexts with regards maybe to how I view and see things. So it's so ironic because their response maybe to peer has to look different when you're speaking to teens, adolescents, right?
Yeah. And it was eye-opening too to see, like, you could be reading something and not really get into context because you just don't understand it, and it's just that divide in terms of different generations. So I thought that was very eye-opening to again highlight maybe like parents not being aware of everything that's going on because you just don't know the signs, or you don't know where to look, or you don't even know what you're looking at. So I thought that was really, really interesting.
Oh yeah, and this was definitely a masterclass with regards. At least you like to think the way this episode ends is that it's an opportunity for Luke's character to reshift how he communicates and has a closer relationship with his son.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because I just think like he clearly doesn't know him
Mhm.
at all,
And
and that's
sometimes I think
evident.
yeah, sometimes I think it's not that you don't even know the individual, you just don't know how to connect to them, as
Mhm.
well. Like, you just
Oh
like
yeah,
you
oh
said,
yeah.
parents and children can be so different. You guys can like different things, different expectations, like be put from a parent to a child. And it's just trying to connect and trying to figure out, who is this person? You know what I mean? How do I connect? And sometimes it might be easier, I'm not sure, to just not really address things or try to find that connection because you just don't know how to go about doing it.
Oh,
You know?
exactly. And there was one scene, in particular in the school scene with him and his partner here, where, he asked her if she wants children. It was something that, thinking about it, and he said, oh, he never did, but of course he loves his son. And he just said, maybe I'm not the right father for him, right? But it's acknowledging
Mm.
all the things you said, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily knowing how to relate or how to connect.
Mhm. Yeah, but I did like you said, the ending of that, how it was an opportunity for him to explore a new relationship with his son, and especially with this specific case, trying to connect with him so he knows, what's going on with him. We do have some comments. Let me just see. Oh, hi Patrick. He says listening in the background. And then Holland said, "Hey Mika and Kira, I heard about this earlier today from Sam and Brendan, and I definitely want to watch this." Oh yeah, it's a great series, Holland. I'll have to check out what they said about it as well. Okay, so episode 3. I think episode 3 was my favorite of the series. And again, this is just like I said, a masterclass in acting. I just thought the scene was so well done. It has Jamie and his psychiatrist, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name Brioni. Was the psychiatrist's name? The clinical psychologist, and she was assigned to Jamie's case to kind of give an independent evaluation of who he is as a person for the before his trial. And I just thought this was masterful. And Owen Cooper as an actor, this shows me that he has a long career ahead of him. And I think for this series, this was the first episode that they shot and the first time that both actors met each other. And just a powerful episode. What do you think, you're?
Oh, I agree. I think out of the four episodes, this was the standout, honestly, in my opinion. Second would be the last episode for reasons we'll get into. But this was all shot. Well, initially you are seeing some scenes when she's kind of moving about the facility that he's in, but primarily the entirety of the scene is really in this room, what you're seeing on
Mhm.
screen currently. The two just having a conversation. And we learned that she's been visiting him. He had a prior assessment, and I think from just her questioning, she's able to unearth a lot from Jamie and provoke, honestly, a lot of
Mhm.
raw emotion and honestly what was needed in terms to make like a thorough assessment.
Yeah.
And this is the episode where I saw Jamie. It was so layered. It was like a roller coaster. It wasn't lost to me. I think she started by bringing him a hot chocolate, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he throws this hot chocolate. You just see him go from 1 to like 10, and then it's just so scary and frightening. And then you see that element, which I kind of looked at to say, oh wow, that's that anger, right? That's
Mhm.
clearly palpable. That could have like that's what was maybe present in terms of when he victimized Katie, right? Like our victim in
Yeah.
this series. Um,
Yeah, it was like a
yeah,
switch.
right.
You explained it really good. It was like a switch. He went from 0 to 360. And it was so great how she was able to kind of peel those layers because, as you mentioned, he starts off very calm and collected, bringing him the hot chocolate. You see this young, vulnerable kid, and you're kind of feeling like, oh, what caused this? He's very impressionable. But as she's talking to him, trying to figure out kind of why he did what he did, you can see those hints of anger. You do see those explosions of anger come out. I think he even mentioned on one part because he hints there was another psychiatrist who did an assessment, a male psychiatrist, And he tells her, why are you asking me these questions? Why are you trying to understand me? You know what I mean? And that really makes him upset. And he plays really too very manipulative. You can see that manipulation because he wants her to like him. He tries to kind of steer the conversations in certain ways, and it really was so well done.
Oh yeah, and I think that you can walk away from the scene in general with so many different takeaways. And again, we have to assume a lot, right? Because again, we're just trying to learn about like who Jamie is and why he did what he did. But I think it was a good this is the episode where we learned a lot in terms of like how he viewed women, how he learned about the things that he learned about, like his thoughts in terms of like how he viewed his family. And you can tell these aren't questions that one he's comfortable with answering, but questions that he probably never had to speak about in general, right? And so just kind of sitting with questions that confront who you actually are and challenges what you think is right. Would make, for the most part, anyone uneasy, but you clearly see him be able to manage maybe light surface questions and then really, like you said, get manipulative, defensive, vulnerable, depending on the questions asked and the
Combative.
she was trying to get him to go into.
Yeah, even the scene where we see him confronting her and trying to kind of be an aggressor, that was very eye-opening too. That dominance that he was trying to assume, and even trying to scare the psychiatrist at one point. So as we said, it was a range of emotions, and I think that really came up too when she tapped on like his views on women, like you said, his views on masculinity, his views on his interactions with peers. It just was things he didn't want to answer because it kind of made him dwell a little into the why. It didn't really seem like he knew why. Is my impression. And
Oh
again,
no,
that could be because of the
I don't
age.
think we ever really know the why. I think that well, I do think we get a glimpse in terms of he clearly was a victim of bullying, right? By the victim. I kind of struggle because we know bullying is very real, and there are some kids obviously who might engage in like self-harm or self-injurious behavior, suicidal ideation, God forbid, like suicide, but that's a reality. Or they become bullies themselves. And then again can act out in terms of anger and aggression. So I think that I empathize with him in terms of being a bully and not necessarily maybe having friends. When I know he had friends, but what I mean by that is like not necessarily having maybe space to kind of hold that and really kind of help him work and process that. But what Katie, my ultimate victim, kind of said to him without giving too much away kind of affected and hit directly towards his manhood, like whether he was attractive, for example, if he was someone that was likable by girls. I think that was angering for him, and I think that even this dynamic being intimidating and trying to be more than what maybe others have perceived him to be
And you
gives us
saw
an idea.
Yeah, you saw bullying kind of twofold as well, because we also know that Katie was a victim of bullying as well. I know he
Exactly, yeah.
mentioned that I think she mentioned the psychiatrist to him about the nudes that had been sent out of Katie and his sharing his thoughts on that. So yeah, bullying across the board, and it was interesting to see, like you said, how youth and how you deal with that. It can be varying ways, as you just mentioned. What do you think about the when she talked to him about his views on masculinity? Because it does hint in the show to kind of what he's been consuming. He talks a little bit about the red pill, which if people aren't aware, refers to kind of like this incel culture in terms of men feeling like or boys feeling like they're kind of ostracized from women. What are your thoughts on that when she talked to him a little bit more about that?
Oh, well, clearly I kind of looked at it as he had an influence in terms of he was getting his information from what he was consuming online. Like most of his friends, like it seems, honestly. And so it was skewed, his thinking, right? And it led me to believe that he hadn't had these conversations perhaps with people that could really truly inform and maybe challenge back what his perceptions were. And so it was quite sad because when you think in terms about like, oh gosh, I can go on and on in terms of our culture and how we can like read things, believe them to be true, and we just kind of stuck in that mentality where we really do need
especially
to
nowadays.
yeah, we need to have other people be able to, the right people, hold that information and really kind of work with us to form healthier ways of how we view things. So I just think it was he was getting his information from the wrong places. Probably most of the kids were, and maybe not having those conversations in full with parents or guidance counselors. Just people maybe more equipped to allow him to have the space to hold that and really kind of think in a more informed way.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on episode 3?
Oh gosh, see, I feel like we can actually do a whole nother episode about this
Just on
breaking
3, right?
scene. Yeah, because it's just like too many things that we aren't even really capturing
Oh,
just
I
based
know.
off of the series in general.
Mhm.
And
I think
again, trying to be mindful of like not spoiling it either.
yeah. And I think that's okay because like you said, it's been out for a week. So and we might have already kind of gave a little bit away, but no, I get what you're saying. But
Yeah, we might
no,
have to
this
do a part 2 continuation.
oh yeah. But this scene is just very layered. Like I said, it dwells more into who Jamie is. You can kind of you do see the anger. You do see uh uh the many facets of him as an individual. And I just like I said, this just was really, really well done. And the psychiatrist, the ending scene, like when he leaves, because he's still a kid who wants to be liked, and he kind of, even though he has these bouts of explosive anger during these scene, he can revert back to that little kid. He is a kid and still wanted to be liked and wanted her validation and wanted her to see him as a good person. And she did a really great job. I can't imagine, like, as a psychiatrist, I think the actress says she doesn't know how psychiatrists do what they do because you have to have that stoic facade when you're dealing with individuals who do commit these heinous crimes. And she did a really good job maintaining that composure and not really allowing those emotions to go free until the Jamie
You know,
left.
when he actually wasn't in the room anymore. And
Mhm.
again, hats off to people and who are psychiatrists, clinical therapists. I think we underestimate that the mind, right,
Mhm.
is a place where you have to really be so focused in terms of the individual that you're providing support and services to. Because even when it's not lost to me, like in the series they said she was the second person doing an assessment, and I
Mhm.
was saying to myself, oh, when we watch like court in real time, or we see these proceedings, and each side is bringing their own defense, like their own
Mhm.
psychiatrist or their own therapists in terms of like giving clinical assessments on like their perception of the person they have. You have them here for this short period of time, but you're trying to do your due diligence and make sure that what you're seeing is capturing fully, right? Like
Yeah, who
who
that
this
person
person
is.
is, if they're a danger to themselves or others. Like there's a lot, right? And so I assume that he probably wasn't presenting this way at all in the first initial assessment with
Oh
that first
no.
psychiatrist, psychologist, like, and then it might not lost to me. She's a woman, right? And so I'm holding
Yep.
that. There's
Mhm.
a piece with
Yeah, and the
regard
first one was the first one was a male. Yep.
exactly, and then maybe challenging questions. Again, clearly, like these are new questions for him, and they hit to the surface of like how he views intimacy, like navigating the opposite sex, all of those things. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was powerful for sure.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and you definitely see like another theme in the series is the like misogyny. So you definitely see his interactions with the women are quite different. Even going back to the first episode, asking for his dad to be the one with him in the interrogation room, and his mother kind of having feelings around like why he doesn't want her there, and especially when she knows everything about him, and like specifically his fear of things and that such. So it's really interesting to look at that piece as well.
Oh yeah, great episode.
hmm Okay, so we'll go to the final episode, and that's episode 4, which I really like this too, and that's exploring kind of how this crime affects Jamie's family. So often we don't really look at how a crime can affect the family
Oh
and how
yeah,
it
I
does
agree.
affect everyone around you.
Oh yeah, I think clearly, right, there's a ripple effect. I think I was saying to you again, we love true crime, but when you look at the victim and the perpetrator, regardless of what role it is, these individuals have friends and families and colleagues and loved ones who care a great deal about them. And I think as a society, when we consume and we watch these things, we formulate opinions about these people and we don't know them, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so this episode was great because you saw a family that assumed, right, they were intact. They were an intact family, the average family, if you will. There was no
Oh, yeah.
violence.
Oh,
There
yeah.
was nothing, no red flags. And so, again, to the outside looking in, there was nothing wrong with this family. And then when something happens, you can see, without giving too much away, how society then shifts so quickly in terms of seeking to place blame when they don't realize the suffering that each family member goes through in terms of grief and shame and mourning and trying to still live your life when it's been so drastically altered.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think Stephen Graham, the co-writer and who plays again, Eddie the father, he said that specifically that he wanted the family to come from a normal background, like that Jamie wasn't a victim of any abuse. This is an everyday family to show that this affects everyone. You don't have to come from a broken home to become to commit a heinous act. This can really affect anyone. And I agree. We don't often look at the family and how that affects them. Usually, when people commit crimes, you like you said, you look for someone to blame, and automatically people do blame the parents of that individual. Where I like how this series shows, are they to blame? I really couldn't see that. I saw two parents doing the best they could. I love that they had those conversations amongst each other, mom and dad, to kind of say, are we good parents? Did we miss those signs? Were we present? We have to work. Him being home, isn't home considered safe? You know what I mean? But is it really safe if he's in his room and just not knowing what he's consuming? Like just asking those questions.
Oh yeah, and I think you brought up a good point in terms of like, the situations all the time where like you can come from like a very good upbringing. I kind of think of it like people will question, oh, nurture versus nature. Like you have two
Mhm.
individuals that come from the same type of environment, they may choose to act completely opposite one another. And then you
Mhm.
have individuals who come from broken homes who don't end up committing violent acts or
Mhm.
crimes, right? So it really is like this huge question mark. I do think, depending on your upbringing, there's clearly things that can influence how you manage your emotions or how you communicate. And like, again, if you're someone prone to violence, for example, in this situation, it's clearly a family where love is evident. But I love the fact that it showed how his sister Lisa kind of dealt with the situation,
Mhm.
right? To the best of her ability. His mother and father, like you said, this scene asking questions with regards to were they good parents? Did they do the best they can? I think, honestly, in my opinion, and again, we're assuming here because we don't know a lot, they obviously did do the best they can or what they thought was enough.
Mhm.
But in the same breath, even though they acknowledged they were good parents, and both of them, even when they were kind of questioning themselves, like commended one another for like being a good mom, being a good dad. You
Mhm.
know, his mother, like she has said, like, oh, when I was home and he was in his room, it wasn't like the door was closed outside of telling him like, oh, lights out, right? Go to bed
Yeah.
or something. It's not like she was opening the door, really talking to him and
Mhm.
checking in. And he said, he tried his best. He had him in sports, or he tried to find things to kind of maybe toughen him up and or help him kind of fit in. But then he had to work, and he was going. I think he said like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that's a lot of parents. Unfortunately, you have to work sometimes long hours, multiple jobs in this day and age just to make ends meet. So
Mhm.
you probably aren't home or as attentive as you would like to be. But again, you consider home to be a safe space. But now you realize too that kids, they can be home, they can be in their rooms, but even those that social media, they're exposed to the world just through that. So again, you don't know what they're consuming. And even though they may be in their room, you really don't know if you're not attentive to what they're digesting.
Oh yeah, exactly. And again, like it's not lost to me. Like these conversations are very hard, but like to the best of your ability, you have those conversations in a way that you know how to navigate them. And again, I think is very hard when you kind of take blame for things
Mhm,
that to me not warranted. I think you do the best you can until you know better.
mhm.
But clearly, his parents are going to question these things continuously. It's not like a one-off, and even seeing if they survive it, right? Because at
Yeah.
13, we don't know if there'll be a season two. We don't. We assume 100% he's going to be in confined in some
Mhm,
capacity for a long
mhm,
duration. And then his
mhm.
absence, what does that mean for the family dynamics? It isn't over just based off of him committing this act and now being detained. It's going to be with this family indefinitely. And so, how do you even
Yeah.
attempt to navigate that?
Yeah, and they're victims as well. So,
Mhm.
and we see them struggling with dad being threatened where they live. Do they stay? Do they go? Dad's business, how will that be affected? Even his daughter. I mean, they don't talk about that, but I can imagine her going to school and then what that kids are talking about at
Oh
her
yeah, I think she
school.
said one thing that stood out to me in terms of her, she had said at school like no one's leaving her like notes or anything, so there's that. But then she
Okay,
also
yeah.
said oh, but I'm still Jamie's sister, so she'll still have
Mhm.
to hold that title of being the sister of someone who committed this crime. And
Mhm.
I'm assuming, because we don't know a lot of information, Billy, who she was talking to on the phone, is maybe a close friend or a boyfriend.
Mhm.
And again, there was that one scene where even when the mother asked her how things were going there, the daughter said, "Oh, it's none of your business," and she didn't ask anything else in
Yeah.
addition to that, right? So it kind of just speaks to like, oh, like we have opportunities here to kind of dig a little bit more, or like
Yeah.
probe a little bit
Yeah.
more, and we want to be
Yeah.
respectful and keep our
And to ask
distance.
those yeah, to ask those questions, those relevant questions, like you said, yeah, dig a little deeper. Yeah, I remember that. That's true. Yeah. So it's interesting because again, the family, they're victims as well in this, you know what I mean? And they'll remain victims too. Um, so that's very interesting too in how you process that. But again, that goes to, like you said, I can imagine holding some type of blame you might feel. I think dad, he does an apology. Um, to Jamie, because he does hold some type of blame and not thinking that he was
Oh yeah,
there
he
how
said.
he
I
could
think
be.
he ended the. He said, "I could have done better."
Mhm, mhm, yeah, yeah,
And it's a
but I
hard truth, right? But like,
yeah,
I mean, there's some truth in it, right? It's a hard truth. It doesn't necessarily mean you were a bad parent, but
mhm,
it's an acknowledgement we all can make as people that we can always do better.
mhm, and that's what I really love about this series is because is it really speaks to just asking those questions. The series does not, hold any blame. Yeah, I think it holds a lot of people accountable. It can be the bullying, it can be the social media, it can be the parents, it can be school, it can be there's so many
Lots of
things that
influence.
yeah, so many things that can be the influence. But it just causes you to ask those questions, and maybe for those youth in your life, you can talk to them a little bit more to kind of dig a little deeper to what's going on with them. I think that's the key for this series is just to probe those questions because it is such an epidemic. And I think the UK, like I was telling Kira last week, they even talked about in Parliament making this series something that is going to be shown in school to youth to kind of address those questions about misogyny, toxic masculinity, dating violence. What do you think about that? Showing that in school?
Oh, I think that the schools have a great opportunity to actually utilize like a body of work like this to visually demonstrate what they probably encounter and experience already.
Hmm.
And then you can show them and have a more layered conversation, which I
Hmm.
love. I think the problem and what will continue to be a challenge, and it's not lost on me that, of course, I don't know the challenges that exist in other countries, but I assume with kids in mind, is just having the opportunity to have the time and resources and funding and ability to be able to share these things on the scale that's warranted. And so I think I love it. And again, just there's so many limitations with regards to how hard it is for teachers in general nowadays just to get their basic needs met in school systems. I think that if we are really serious in terms of helping our young men and then helping our young women, we need to do whatever we need to do, and there should not be any lack of resources.
Yeah, and then I think another thing too is for parents to just kind of ask those questions to kind of see what your kids are consuming, because again, talking about toxic masculinity, they hinted to influences, we have that's Andrew Tate's of the world and everything, and young boys, what they're consuming is a big influence on them now. So hopefully this will have parents to kind of asking those questions and seeing what kids are viewing and delving a little bit more deeper.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree. It's definitely a conversation starter. And again, I'm very glad that it currently exists now for parents to consume and teachers and like anyone to consume it and actually start having a more not nuanced, but a more layered conversation. I think that if anything, it opens the door now, because you don't want a heinous acts one to continue. But clearly there's an epidemic, not just affecting young boys, young men, across this country, across the world, violence against women. And so there is this root cause that requires a magnifying glass at this point, in my opinion.
And I think one of the big pieces too, and Stephen Graham talked about that too, is men. Men are going to have to be a big part of that, and talking to young boys and being those positive role models for them that they need as well. But first impressions for this series, just amazing. This is one I would recommend to rewatch. I would definitely rewatch it. It's just a masterclass of acting, and I just love the questions that it probes.
Agreed. And I'll definitely rewatch it. It's a series that I'm sure you can pick up more things as like over a rewatch. And like I said, we didn't even hit the surface of like so many scenes. I feel like break scene by scene by scene in terms of having conversation and takeaways. Some of the characters we didn't really discuss, like the attorney. I mean, there's so much more going on in the series that maybe we'll come back and do a more in-depth analysis. But if anything, watch it for sure.
Yeah, so good. Yeah. All right, you guys. So as we always say, we're not here for a good, what did we say here?
We're not here for a long time, but a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll be back, you guys, next week. We'll be doing an episode of On Your Radar, and we're going to be talking about the film Hard Truths, and that'll be next Sunday at 7. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope that you enjoyed the show. And if you've seen the series, let us know what your thoughts about it are in the comments.
Yep, love to hear it, you guys.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.